Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Earlier this week I covered G Golem, an archetype that just recently released in the Battles of Legend Crystal Revenge set. And while I don't make the claim that my videos are a comprehensive guide to the entirety of an archetype, I can only share so much info in a single video after all, there is one piece of info I intentionally left out. Not in regards to their mechanics, but rather a very interesting quirk. See, the deck revolves around G Golem Crystal Heart, but that name might sound a little familiar if you've played during the Vrains era. And if you watched the anime, even more so. And that's because Crystal Heart didn't originate in the Earth Ignis' signature deck, rather it was gifted to them by the Water Ignis Aqua, entrusting it to them as a sign of their bond. And, you know, call me a hopeless romantic, but I couldn't very well cover one without the other. So, if you'll permit me my usual format, premiering in the July 2019 core set, Rising Rampage, Marincess are a theme piloted by Sky Zyzan, online persona Blue Angel, after re-debuting their model as Blue Maiden. And I'm only kind of kidding here, because this also marks the point where Sky teams up with Aqua. Together, they wield an immensely powerful Link strategy that has a few nifty tricks up its sleeves. Basically, if you like Imperm, you're gonna like what you see here. But before I get ahead of myself, let's do a deep dive into the Aqua Idols roster, see what strats we have to burst our opponent's bubble, then see if we can find any assistants that can go with the flow. It's time to make some waves with Marincess. But before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what I do. Once we get to 50k, we'll be doing our next 5Ds video on Akiza, and every sub helps. Also, check out my Discord, where the lore videos have claimed another victim! And my Twitch, where you can watch me put all my lessons to the test live. And if you want to go that extra mile, join my Patreon where you can get my videos early, help us reach these video milestones, and become part of the credits like these lovely people. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, back to the video. So, what's the deal with Marincesses? Well, they're a series of water attribute Cyberse monsters who chain their summons together to make massive Link monsters, with a big focus on recycling material, interacting with our opponent's field, and making gigantic towers that don't stop for anything. After all, the show must go on. To that end, let's start by going over our support cast, starting with Marincess Mandarin, a level 2 monster with 100 attack and defense, and if you control 2 or more Marincess monsters while this card is in your hand or grave, you can target a Water Link monster you control to special summon this card to your zone that monster points to, but banish it when it leaves the field. This makes Mandarin a pretty good extender, potentially being used on the field as material before using its revival effect, and then having the opportunity to do so again later on. Or, heck, just summon it directly out of your hand, nothing stopping you. Now, I know this is based off of a Mandarin fish, but I'm weirdly craving oranges right now. Is anyone else having an orange kick? Marincess C-Star is a level 2 monster with 800 attack and 400 defense, and you can send this card from your hand to the grave, then target a Marincess monster you control, and it gains 800 attack until the end of this turn. Notably, this can be activated up to twice per turn, so if you have 2 in hand, or if you recycle the one you discard, you can increase your attack power by 1600, which is a pretty big burst. Though I feel like it should have been able to do it more times per turn, this deck deserves at least 4 stars. With 2 stars, I've got a feeling some review bombing is going on. Marincess Seahorse is a level 3 monster with 1400 attack and 1000 defense, and you can special summon this card from your hand to your zone a Marincess Link monster points to. And during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish this card from your grave to special summon a water monster from your hand to a zone a Marincess Link monster points to. Now, that sounds pretty good by itself. But what if I told you that this was a 1-card starter that sets up a long line of Link summoning? We'll get into the specifics later, but Seahorse can get you easily into a Link 3, and because of its grave effect, can help you extend in later turns using Marincesses in your hand that aren't quite as gifted. But power like that doesn't just come from talent. This prodigy works hard and plays even harder. There's no time to be Seahorsing around. Marincess Basilalima is a level 4 monster with 600 attack and 2100 defense, and if a monster you control would be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card from your grave instead. While on the field, once per turn, you can banish a Marincess trap card from your grave to add a Marincess trap card with a different name from your deck to your hand. And if this card is banished, you can target a face-up monster you control, and it gains a permanent 600 attack boost. This is a wild piece of support, largely because it covers so many different but important bases. Searching UR themes trap cards, which are very powerful, and providing protection. It even gives a fairly substantial attack buff when doing that protecting. It's also funny that it can protect and empower non-Marincess monsters, meaning you can keep any of your off-theme techs like Abyss Dweller safe. Honestly, any deck would be clamoring for a monster like this. Marincess Blue Tang is a level 4 monster with 1500 attack and 1200 defense, and if normal or special summoned, you can send a Marincess monster from your deck to the grave, except a copy of itself. And if this card is sent to the grave as material for the link summon of any water monster, you can excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you do, you can add an excavated Marincess card to your hand, also shuffle the rest into your deck. While Seahorse is the prime engine for the deck, Blue Tang is basically better Seahorse, insofar as it sets them up. There's even the chance you'll get a free card out of it with the Excavate, and even if you whiff, it still chain blocks an on-summon effect, so it's a win-win. It's like that old saying goes, it takes blue to tango. Marincess Pascalis is a level 4 monster with 1200 attack and 2000 defense, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon a Marincess monster from your hand in defense position, except a copy of itself. And during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish this card from your grave, then target a Marincess spell or trap card in your grave and add it to your hand. This pairs nicely with most of our Marincess monsters, jump-starting your link plays by getting that additional material on board, while also providing you with a way to recur your spells and traps for later use. Heck, you don't even have to limit yourself to link plays. With all of our level 4s, this also gives you great access to the rank 4 toolbox, especially the parts that are water specific. Abyss Dweller is popping off this format at time of recording, and Marincess gets to enjoy that 500 point bonus. But you can also play a little Kraken control, or get a negate with Totally Awesome via Bahamut Shark. This card is an amazing utility pick that you definitely shouldn't Pascalis up. Marincess Spring Girl is a level 4 monster with 1200 attack and 1000 defense, and you can banish a Marincess monster from your grave to special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is sent to the grave as material for a Water Link monster, you can send cards from the top of your deck to the grave, equal to the number of Marincess monsters you control, then inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each Marincess card sent to the grave by this effect. So it doesn't even count the number of cards you have, but what you mill out of that pool of cards. It's a little silly, while some of our cards do have graveyard synergies, it certainly isn't universal, so wanting to self-mill like Dante feels a little much. Especially since it only deals 200 damage per card you hit. But, to be fair, in time, even a single hit might be all you need. And worst case scenario, it's still a special summon from your hand if you have a spare Marincess engraved to feed to it. It's a fine pick, but I wouldn't exactly call it integral to the theme. Also, you might want to consider a wardrobe change. I'm not sure the all blue thing is a very good color palette for spring. Marincess Crown Tail is a level 5 monster with 600 attack and 2300 defense, and during damage calculation, if a monster battles another monster as a quick effect, you can send one other Marincess monster from your hand to the grave to special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, the damage you take from that battle is halved. And at the start of the damage step, if an opponent's monster attacks, you can banish this card from your grave, and this turn, you take no battle damage that's less than or equal to the total link rating of all Marincess monsters in your grave times 1000. Wow, that's an interesting set of effects that is mostly concerned with keeping you from taking damage, which means it largely isn't actually advancing your game plan. You do get access to some material by way of its own summoning effect, but it is pricey and very specifically timed. However, once you develop your grave, you will be able to use Crown Tail's effect in grave to keep you from taking damage, because unless your opponent is packing some serious attack power, you can easily get upwards of 6 total link rating in your grave, translating to being immune to any amount of battle damage that's at or below 6k. I'd recommend just sending this right to the grave with Blue Tang if you can help it as an emergency off switch for a battle phase, but it certainly isn't the crown jewel of our lineup. Marincess Sleepy Maiden is a level 5 monster with 500 attack and 2500 defense. It can target a Marincess card you control to special summon itself from the hand, and if you do, Sleepy Maiden then gains an effect where the targeted card can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. You can also banish this card from your grave, then target a Marincess Link monster you control to equip a Marincess Link monster from your grave to it. Now, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this card was made largely to support our field spell, as keeping it safe is paramount, and equipping Marincesses onto our other Marincesses works with that field spell very well. We'll go into why later on, but trust me, this is a solid card that can, even without the field spell, protect important on-theme cards from your opponent's destructive effects. They're literally harnessing the power of the Tired Sleepy. Alright, that's all the main deck monsters, now it's time for our links, starting with the most important one, Marincess Blue Slug, a Link 1 monster with 1500 attack, requiring any level 4 or lower Marincess monster as material. If Link summoned, you can target a Marincess monster in your grave, except a copy of itself, and add it to your hand, but this does special summon lock you into water monsters for the rest of the turn. This works incredibly well with Seahorse, as you can normal summon them, link into Blue Slug, using their effect to put Seahorse back in your hand, which can then utilize its own special summoning method to hit the field. So you've got yourself enough material for a Link 2 off a single card, and you didn't even have to run any main deck bricks to make it happen. And if you go the blue Tang route forbidding the Seahorse so you can get the Excavate, that's a possible free card. With effects like this, your deck speed will be anything but sluggish. Marincess Sea Angel is a Link 1 monster with 1000 attack, requiring a level 4 or lower Marincess monster as material, and if Link summoned, you can add a Marincess spell from your deck to your hand. A very simple effect, but as usual, some of the most powerful effects in the game are. Using the previous example, you can link that Seahorse you special summoned into Sea Angel, getting the search, then moving on with your Link plays as normal. Basically, any Link climbing ladder in this deck can get you a free spell by diverting into Sea Angel, and I'm living for it. What an angel. Marincess Coral Anemone is a Link 2 monster with 2000 attack, requiring any 2 water monsters as material, and they can target a water monster with 1500 or less attack in your grave and special summon it to a zone this card points to once per turn, but this also water locks your special summons for the rest of the turn. And if this card is sent to the grave, you can target a Marincess card in your grave, except a copy of itself, and add it to your hand. Not monster, card, so any of your on-theme cards are able to be grabbed, and since this triggers on being sent to the grave as Link material, you'll be using this fairly often, especially because its ability to revive a 1500 or less attack water monster means you can almost immediately leverage it into a Link 3 monster. I'm telling you, with friends like these, you're going to be making a lot of anemones. Marincess Marbled Rock is a Link 3 monster with 2500 attack, requiring 2 or more water monsters as material. You can target a Marincess card in your grave and add it to your hand once per turn, and when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can send a Marincess monster from your hand to the grave, and for that battle, monsters can't be destroyed by that battle, also you take no battle damage. This is a pretty good monster to rest your laurels on if you don't have any extenders, as it'll buy back more of your cards while helping to keep collateral damage in the battle phase low. But since we haven't even begun to see the power of the Marincess Link monster roster, you should always be on the lookout for how to use Marbled Rock as a stepping stone. Marincess Coral Triangle is a Link 3 monster with 1500 attack, requiring 2 or more Marincess monsters as material. And once per turn, you can send a water monster from your hand to the grave to add a Marincess trap card from your deck to your hand. And if only your opponent controls a monster, you can banish this card from your grave to special summon any number of water Link monsters from your grave whose total Link rating equals 3. However, all these effects will waterlock your special summons at that point onwards, but we've basically bought into the whole water thing, so it's not a big deal. I'm just glad it's not introducing another kind of restriction. Coral Triangle represents another way to climb the Link ladder. It's certainly better if you have spare waters in hand to pitch for your powerful trap cards, and sets up a strong grave effect that can help you get back into the game if your monster lineup gets wiped. It even has the bonus of not banishing the monsters you summon, which is usually tacked onto a lot of effects like this. So your opponent's gonna have to be careful lest they get lost in your own Bermuda Triangle. Marincess Wonderheart is a Link 4 monster with 2400 attack, requiring 2 or more water monsters as material. Once per battle during damage calculation, if this card battles a monster as a quick effect, you can special summon one of your Marincess monster cards equipped to this card. Also, this card can't be destroyed by battle, and you take no battle damage from that battle. You also equip that special summoned monster back onto Wonderheart during the end phase. And if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can special summon a Link 3 or lower Marincess monster from your grave. When it comes to closing out games, this is our best monster. You've already seen one card that equips our Marincess with other monsters, and as we go on, we'll see another that can attach a lot of cards, giving you a lot of monsters you can resummon with Wonderheart's effect, helping to add to your offensive pressure. Because while this sounds like a defensive effect, you can trigger this even if you're going to win that battle to get another body on board. And because you only have to re-equip that monster during the end phase, you can spend main phase 2 utilizing their effects, and even using them as link material to make another powerful boss, which we'll see in just a bit. And having the floating effect means you can safely invest in this monster, knowing you'll have a fallback plan. Honestly, a lot of your wins are going to come from your opponent spending all their time wondering how the heck this card works. Marincess Great Bubble Reef is a Link 4 monster with 2600 attack, requiring 2 or more water monsters as material. Once per turn, during each standby phase, you can banish a water monster from your grave or face-up field to draw a card. And each time any number of monsters are banished face-up, this card gains 600 attack for each until the end of that turn. It can also send a water monster from your hand to the grave to special summon one of your banished Marincess monsters. If you like Decode Talk or Heat Soul, you're gonna love Bubble Reef, because it's out there doing basically the same thing. It also guarantees that Bubble Reef is basically a 3200 attack monster, which is kinda tough to get over. And on your turn, it reborns a Marincess you might have banished for the draw effect, or for anything else. This is a better going first option than Wonderheart, or for whenever the game starts to get grindy, since Reef gives you more opportunities to draw into outs, or ways to protect your plays, as a great barrier Reef should. Marincess Aqua Argonaut is a Link 4 monster with 2300 attack, requiring 2 or more water monsters as material. Your opponent can't target other monsters for attacks while this card is in the extra monster zone. It can target a water monster you control and a card your opponent controls and return them to the hand, and when a spell or trap card or effect is activated on the field during your opponent's turn as a quick effect, you can special summon one of your Marincess monster cards equipped to this card, and if you do, negate that activated effect. This is also another pretty good turn 1 monster to sit on, as it gives you a way to negate an important spell or trap. But it's also better at actually breaking boards than its Link 4 contemporaries. While Wonderheart and Bubble Reef wield raw strength, the ability to bounce any card can't be underestimated. And of course, keeping your other monsters safe from attacks is a huge plus. This Marincess is not someone to be trifled with. Now, I've saved this one for last because it does recontextualize all of our previous Link monsters, or at least our bosses, and that is Marincess Crystal Heart, a Link 2 monster with 0 attack, requiring any 2 water monsters as material. It's unaffected by your opponent's monster effects while in the extra monster zone. During the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, that opponent's monster is unaffected by all card effects except its own, and when this card, or your Marincess Link monster this card points to, is targeted for an attack, you can send a Marincess monster from your hand to the grave, and for that battle, your monster can't be destroyed by a battle, and you take no battle damage. Now, you'll notice something peculiar here. This card does absolutely nothing. It's a lot of protection effects that don't really get us anywhere. So what in the 7 C's makes this so important? Well, for that, we're gonna have to immediately move to our spells and traps to talk about another very important card for the theme, Marincess Battle Ocean, a field spell card that grants all Marincess monsters you control a 200 attack buff, as well as an additional 600 for each Marincess card equipped to it. When you link summon a Marincess monster to the extra monster zone, except during the damage step, you can equip up to 3 Marincess Link monsters with different names from your grave to that Link monster. So between the equips and the static buff, any Marincess could gain as much as 2,000 extra attack. But the real kicker is the second effect. Monsters you control in the extra monster zone that were link summoned using Marincess Crystal Heart as material are unaffected by your opponent's card effects. That's right, the field spell can make your Link monsters towers if you build them right. Your Wonderheart will hit like a tank while giving you access to some other big threats to summon from your own back row, while Aqua Argonaut won't be wanting for spell and trap negates. Not to mention that Great Bubble Reef is going to get outrageously huge. This card is vital to your success as a Marincess player, as proper usage of this will maximize your damage output, provide you with a nigh insurmountable monster, and to top it all off, a water-themed battle arena that's so on point it would make Misty from Pokemon jealous. And while we're here, let's talk about the rest of our spells and traps. Next in line is Marincess Dive, a normal spell card that has one of two effects, but it does set up that water lock on special summoning for the rest of the turn. It can either target and special summon a non-link Marincess monster in your grave, or if Marincess Battle Ocean is in your field zone, you can special summon any Marincess monster from your deck. Another big upside for having your field spell, but it's already pretty powerful on its own. This is probably one of our best targets to grab off of Sea Angel because this represents another free material to extend your link plays, which means Seahorse is a 1-card Link 4. But it also gives you the option to summon a monster from your deck if your signature setup is already online. So really, it doesn't matter what your level of power or expertise in, this card just wants you to dive right in. Marincess Bubble Ring is a normal trap card, and when a monster declares an attack, negate that attack, and if you do, special summon a Marincess Crystal Heart from your extra deck or grave. You can banish this card from your grave, then target a Link 2 or higher Marincess Link monster you control. This turn, it can attack a number of times each battle phase up to its Link rating, but your opponent takes no battle damage from battles involving it. So if you need to clear out a whole field, slap this onto one of your Link 4s and that board will be steamrolled in no time. I also like that it's a way to deploy a Crystal Heart on your next turn, which isn't only great for setting up your towers, but also because Crystal Heart does have some ability to protect itself. It's not a powerhouse of a card, but your Marincess deck will feel a lot less whole if you don't put a ring on it. Marincess Cascade is a normal trap card that banishes any number of Marincess Link monsters you control until your next standby phase, and it gains attack equal to the total Link rating of the monsters banished to activate this card times 300 until the end of this turn. And if you control a Link 3 or higher Marincess monster, you can activate this card from your hand. That's right, we're starting to see a little something spicy from these Masters of the Sea. Various trap cards we have can activate from your hand under the right conditions. That condition being having a Link 3 or higher Marincess monster. Many of our trap cards can activate if we have a Link 3 or higher Marincess monster on the field, which is fairly common. Being able to vanish your monsters for a bit is a pretty neat way to dodge removal, and the extra boost can even be used to get over big monsters you don't like, or even push for game by banishing Marincess Links that have already attacked. And remember, it checks the Link rating, not the number of Link monsters banished, so any of your Link 4s represent a 1200 point boost by itself, leading to a waterfall of damage that'll easily cascade you into a victory. Marincess Circulation is a normal trap card that targets a water link monster you control and returns it to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon a Marincess Link monster from your extra deck with the same rating but a different name, but for the rest of the turn it can't attack directly, but also it can't be destroyed by battle, and this is treated as a Link summon. And if you control a Link 3 or higher Marincess monster, you can activate this card from your hand. This has some big combo potential, no doubt about it. Not being able to attack directly with the summoned monster means that ending the game with this will be a little tricky. You'll have to commit it at a point when your opponent still has monsters you can attack, so it'll usually be very early. But by swapping Marbled Rock into Coral Triangle, you can get the former's Grave Recursion, followed up by Triangle Search, while still being able to go to the grave to activate its effect later. And being able to adjust your Link 4s to suit any given situation is stupendous. And that's to say nothing of the utility of just getting a monster off the field to avoid interaction, or to get that sweet immunity to battle destruction. It even counts as being properly summoned. Seriously, this card is great to have in circulation. Marincess Current is a normal trap card, and when a Marincess Link monster you control destroys an opponent's monster by battle, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the Link rating of that monster you control times 400. Then, if you destroyed an opponent's Link monster by battle while you control a Link 2 or higher Marincess monster, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's Link rating times 500, and if you control a Link 3 or higher Marincess monster, you can activate this card from your hand. This amounts to a pretty big chunk of burn damage that gets better if your opponent is playing a big Link monster, but it doesn't accomplish much outside of that. However, it is a way to get some damage in if you've turned off the battle damage of one of your monsters via Bubble Ring. Sadly, it won't trigger every time you destroy a monster, so you can't stack on a ginormous amount of damage, but you can always just pick the best one. This is another one of you might want to keep on hand in case time approaches, so in that regard, at least it's current on time rules. Marincess Snow is a normal trap card, and if any number of Marincess Link monsters you control are destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target one of those monsters to special summon a Marincess Link monster from your extra deck with a lower Link rating than that monster, and is unaffected by your opponent's card effects while you control it. And this is also treated as a Link summon. Sadly, you can't play this one from your hand for free, but given the nature of the card, that kinda makes sense. This makes for another good searchable one-of to add some insurance to your setups, allowing you to maintain board presence in the face of removal, so your monsters don't snowflake out on you. Marincess Wave is a normal trap card, and if you control a Marincess Link monster, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls and negate that face-up monster's effects until the end of this turn. Then, if you control a Link 2 or higher Marincess monster, all face-up monsters you currently control are unaffected by your opponent's card effects until the end of the turn, and if you control a Link 3 or higher Marincess monster, you can activate this card from your hand. Now, this is easily one of our best trap cards. It's an imperm that also just makes your face-up monsters unaffected by all of your opponent's cards for that turn, and can be activated from the hand once you have a Link 3 on board. This isn't even once per turn, so the more you have, the more you can activate, and with our ability to recur cards out of the grave, you can loop this over and over again to lock your opponent out of the game, while keeping your stuff safe by harnessing the wave motion of the ocean. Alright, that's all the Marincess cards, but what do we do with them? Well, with how big we can get our monsters, we're looking to push in for lethal as soon as possible through our own Protect the Castle playstyle. Whichever Link 4 fits the situation best, you go for it with Crystal Heart right out of the gate, keep a lock on the game, and don't let it go until the last life point is gone. So what can we play to help them out? Well, firstly, we should see if there are any other like-minded Water Cyberse monsters out there who want to join in our cause. While Marincess take up almost the entirety of that pool, Scripton is basically more copies of Spring Girl, but this one actually recycles cards. Sea Archiver is a bit more extension, though it's a bit more cumbersome since it can only revive from the grave, and Splash Mage is another extender from the extra deck. Though be warned, the Marincess usually waterlock you, Splash Mage will actually Cyberse lock you. Speaking of which, is there anyone in the broader Cyberse roster that can help? Well, Lady D-Bug has a great search effect, and whatever you search, you can summon to the field with Seahorse's Grave effect if it's currently live. Cynet Mining will help you fix up your hand, while Cynet Crosswipe is quick effect removal. And while they're not a water monster, Access Code Talker is still pretty strong. As long as you haven't waterlocked yourself during a turn, you can take any monster plus a Link 3 and make one of the most powerful removal options ever printed. Just make sure to set your expectations. As a water-focused deck, you're probably only going to get one activation per turn. However, one of the best pieces of off-brand support is 4-Mud Skipper. Using its effect, it can mimic Crystal Heart from your extra deck, taking on its name, type, and attribute. It doesn't take on its Link rating, so Skipper still only counts as 1, but because you technically used Crystal Heart as material, the field spell Battle Ocean will recognize that monster as valid for its protection. And bonus, because it searches out a level 5 or higher Cyberse monster when sent to the grave as Link material, you can search out Sleepy Maiden and use them to protect your field spell. This card is hella useful, and I'm infinitely sad that this somehow isn't a water attribute monster. But since we end up locking ourselves into the water attribute all the time, what can that do for us? Well, Salvage, as usual, is a great way to stock up our hand. It's also in a great position to recycle our Link monsters, since a number of our starters are under the attack threshold for recycling. While you do want to keep some engraved to be used as equipment, we do need to ensure they get Link summoned again so we can access our engine. In fact, considering how good we are at it, you might even want to consider dipping into Pot of Avarice, but well, at time of recording, Tirashizu is still a threat, so anything involving graveyards is kind of a no-go. Some of the new Mako Tsunami support might be of interest to you. Fury of Kairyushin gets you one of the most potent trap cards ever printed, and has a graveyard protection effect to top things off. And while we aren't going to be utilizing a legendary Ocean, since our field spell is already pretty legendary, the Ocean Dragonlord version isn't half bad as a tribute summon, especially because there are non-field spell cards that count as Yuumi, namely Sea Stealth 2. Which is searchable by Ocean Dragonlord that not only applies their weird goes and match style effect, but also provides some pretty good targeting protection, and can even revive Ocean Dragonlord for a short period of time. It's kinda wild. The Ice Jades also have a lot of water synergies you can utilize. Tremora gives you access to more summons from hand, Tanola can revive, and Acti is a bit of a draw engine. And once you get a few in rotation, they can float into more Ice Jades whenever a water monster you control is destroyed, giving you more bodies to block with or to use as free link material. Or maybe even both. As for a silly tech pick, and I do think this is actually going to be one of Marincess' most competitively viable tactics moving forward, World Sea Dragon Zealantis, because it actually turns your water lock into a way of completely ruining your opponent's entire monster setup. See, most cards that banish monsters temporarily are banished in such a way that they're returned to the field, not actually being special summoned. This prevents the abuse of on-summon effects and to keep things like Bottomless Trap Hole from triggering. But Zealantis is no such effect. It banishes all monsters on the field, then states that it special summons as many monsters banished by this effect as possible to their owner's fields. But here's the kicker. You're the one special summoning those monsters. So if you're, say, waterlocked, your opponent's gonna find they don't get to have much of a board after this resolves if they're playing anything other than water. And because you can make this off of a single monster, you can easily turn one of your Link 4 bosses into this, I recommend Bubble Reef, to immediately take over the game. And that's all I have to say about Marincess. This deck is a true blue powerhouse, no doubt about it. It's got style, it's got grace, and it won't hesitate to punch you in the face with huge attack stats and some wickedly powerful tech cards. So make sure you reserve your tickets now so you can make sure your opponent is the one that ends up in the splash zone. Now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Marincesses doing swimmingly, or are they too watered down to be effective? And if you made it this far, let me know who your favorite Marincess design is. They all look really pretty, thanks in part to taking design cues from a whole lot of ocean life, and I'd like to hear which one you like best. And while you're there, make sure to like this video and subscribe to show your support, ring that bell so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with someone you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Harry, the ominous benefactor, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Adam Zajdel, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Cameron Berg, Cozy Boat 275, Eric, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Ironic, John Manji, Julius Sneezer, Larakia, Mana Charge, Marluxia is a girl, Meteornus, Michael Madsen, Mighty Action X, Muzuki Clark, Neo Trinity, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Rem T Bright, RJ the Jank Monarch, Ruxith Sarani, Sophie, apparently, The Fresh Prince of Conair, The Wizard Moose, True Neutral, Xander Wolfensberger and Xyrus, Cosmic Crusaders Ariel Kersey, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Chaz Ghost, Chris Kessler, Corbinisms, Dallas Modeste, Emily, Eva Padilla, Howling Zangetsu, Herbal D, Jesus Garcia, Kale the Dragon, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-De-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Matt Simmons, Nitromo, Sarah Lo Sulshi, Shaquille Solomon, Shooting Star 3300, Star-Lord 777, Super Purd, Tucker Ordorn and the Legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. I'm only able to continue doing this thanks to the support of these lovely people, so if you'd like to be a part of these credits, as well as help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, please check out my YouTube membership or Patreon links in the description to see if I have anything you'd like on offer. And if you'd like to catch up on some Vrain's lore, check out this video I made that covers the deck run by Aqua's Ignis companion, G Golems. And if you want to see two Yu-Gi tubers going at it, check out Noah Jenk and I's latest series, Progression Polls, where your voice shapes the format. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.